Hi, my name's Justin Johnson.
And I'm Josiah Stowe.
And we are Dominion Wealth Strategists. We are created to put money in the hands of those that are sitting in the pews.
From budgeting to estate planning, savings accounts, retirement planning, life insurance, and a heck of a lot more here at Dominion.
That means that you are leaving an inheritance that passes multiple generations because that is the legacy. It's part of our mission.
All of Christ for all of life.
And all of finance for Christendom.
Exploring theology, doctrine, and all of the fascinating subjects in between, broadcasting from an undisclosed location, Dead Men Walking starts now. Oh, well, hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Dead Men Walking Podcast. I'm your host, Greg Moore. You can find out more about us at DMWpodcast.com, where you can support the show, find out past episodes. Heck, even grab yourself one of these nice mugs we have there. Wine 'em, dine 'em, Romans 9 'em. And we got some new t-shirt designs up, too. We'll have some coming very soon, partnering with Kiefer Likens, who has redesigned some of our most popular shirts, and we're going to put them up there for you guys to take a look at too. But I don't want to spend too much time just talking about the store and myself and all that. We've got a guest. We want to get right to him. JT Knox. I just met him a few weeks ago online. We run in some of the same circles. Did a little internet search on him. Absolutely love what he's doing, and wanted to have him on the podcast and chop it up with him for a little bit. JT, for those who aren't familiar, and that's going to be including me, can you give us a little bit of your background, maybe a little origin story, if you will, a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely, Greg. Thanks for having me. I appreciate the time, and yeah, it's good to get connected with you. I think just a brief overview. I'm currently a husband of almost 10 years. Have 4 children under the age of 6, and one of which will be born in a month. So really excited for that. Never a dull moment around the house. Outside of being a father and a churchman, a layman, I am an author. So I write overtly Christian fiction. I'm also with my co-author and best friend, Arthur West. We also are authors of a blog, which is called The Father's Mantle, where we talk about biblical headship. We talk about the challenges of being a leader as a father, and just all that encompasses leading your household well. And so you can find more about that on knoxandwest.com. We recently just released our first book in a series, Tales of Calvaria, Trial of Kings, which is right here, which is an overtly Christian medieval action adventure story that is written to nourish and encourage the Christian imagination. And one of the approaches that we take is actually we love our stories to be overtly Christian, because we think the time and the place that God has us in right now is extremely exciting. Because if you're familiar with Aaron Renn, in the concept of the negative world right now, we're in the negative world with Christians and how they encounter with society and how the society views upon Christians. And to me, that tension is very real and is climatic in its own right. And so we don't want to. We believe that writing stories focusing on that, our readers will relate to them. It'll equip them to navigate the world, and it will just really embolden them to go forth and make disciples of the nation. So hopefully that covers just a brief intro, and I'm looking forward to our discussion.
No, that's awesome. Yeah. So you said it is overtly Christian fiction, the newest one that you have there in front of you. And guys, if you're listening or watching, just click in the description below. It'll all be linked up if you want to check out some of his books and more about what JT is doing. Yeah. So what's like the age? It's action and adventure. It's kind of medieval. It's overtly Christian. It's hitting all the things I like. What's the age range on that? Is it like, can like teens and young adults, or like who's your target audience for something like that?
So it would be in the YA category, but it's written for fathers and sons. I've also had fathers reach out, and they've read it to nothing. It is overtly Christian, and also in the sense that there's nothing in it that your 10-year-old or 8-year-old wouldn't be able to enjoy. It's just maybe some of the more complex allegorical elements and the things in the messaging is really driven towards a little bit of a older crowd, so teenage. But it's written for fathers, so there's, within the character archetypes, there's a coming of age son, and there's the father who's struggling to just raise his son in the fear and admonition of the Lord. And the backdrop of it is a Christian kingdom in a realm surrounded by pagan kingdoms. So it emphasizes on that tension and conflict between the two. And so I would say if I was shooting for a target, it would be middle school to high school boys and their fathers. And I've had several fathers who have read it be like, wow, I've really, really enjoyed that. But they probably resonate with a different character than probably their sons do. And that was the intent, but nothing in it would prevent someone from younger or their father reading it to a younger child.
No, I like it. Yeah, you could. Yeah, like you said, even a father could be reading it to a younger child, as we do a lot of times here with some of the classics. We'll read together as a family. But I looked in your bio, and I also saw. I think I saw something about either holding elected office or having some association with public office. And this is going to get us into some of our discussion topics. But can you talk about that a little bit? Were you elected to an office, or have you worked on campaigns, or what's your connection there with kind of politics?
Yeah, so I guess going back to maybe the origin of politics, I didn't really have any desire to work in politics. I still don't. It's not like an aspiration of mine. But it kind of started about 8 years ago. I was actually just a father who, in our small town, the Alphabet Mafia was trying to get and pressure our mayor to have a transgender visibility day. And so I just showed up as a father, a concerned father, and I shared part of the gospel, as well as just that their identity is not rooted in that. And the response I got from my local community was really just recruiting me into politics, because I think it's more of an indictment maybe on a willingness of young fathers to show up in those arenas. But they were like, hey, we really resonated with what you said. And so kind of from there, I stepped into I'm sure you're familiar with a precinct chair position, which is the lowest elected political position in the Republican Party. And for your listeners who don't know, I'd love to get granular on that if that's where you want to go. But if you take your county and you zone it out into individual blocks, those are precincts, and they are the voting members of your local Republican Party. So you grid out your entire county, and it's made up of something like 80. In our case, I think it's 86 precincts, and then those precinct chairs represent the voting body of the actual county party. And so that's why I like to really encourage all Christians, because those, on average, nationwide, are 50% vacant. So that's just people not showing up and willing to sit in them. And you can make a very, very big difference in your local community just by those positions, and you don't have the conflict with public office per se, that some people like to shy away from because of concerns for jobs or whatever that looks like, and I get that. From that, I've moved into state delegate roles. Often precinct chairs are recruited to be state delegates for really granular political type people, but the state delegates make up your state party, and they actually are the ones bringing forth what your state platform should be. So going from super local to statewide, representing the state convention and setting the priorities of the Republican Party. So I've served in that role as well, and that catapulted to me serving into City Council. I was elected on City Council. And then currently I've been sitting, now I've moved in the precinct chair again position. So I've been actively involved in politics for about 8 years now.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I kind of had the same story, although I was always interested in politics. I did my senior thesis on the buying of Congress, which my professor looked at me and went, it was in high school, or my teacher rather, when everyone else is doing it on Van Halen and my trip to Cancun, and I'm doing it on the lobbyists and the fourth arm of the government. But yeah, same thing. Around 2008, 2009, kind of got interested in, hey, what's going on in the country? Got on a conference call and talked to Ron Paul, of all people, if anyone remembers that guy, and kind of lit a fire underneath me, and kind of did the same thing. worked as a precinct delegate, then also a state delegate, was a super delegate for one of the presidential elections, then ran for county commissioner in 2016, which I've been duly elected every 2 years since then. And then, really saw that you can make a difference at the local level if you just truly are Christ-centered, one, and then two, a public servant. You serve at the pleasure of the people, and you understand that. That's why we've been put into position under Romans 13 as well, to bring justice to evildoers and to protect the righteous, right? So
Amen.
I'm a big proponent of Christ-centered politics, meaning if you are a man with principle that puts Christ above all, and that has that biblical worldview, if reformed, even better, then I want to help you get into a position to change your community, because I really think we can do that. Now, that's not to say God doesn't sit in the heavens and does as he pleases, and he can use anyone, anywhere, anytime, anyhow. I think you would probably believe that as well. But at the same time, we're not to sit on our hands.
And the means.
Right. We don't sit on our hands. So it's a nice balance. God is sovereign, but he also holds us responsible, the great mystery, right? And I think part of that responsibility is holding local office. And I think you would agree, and this is the reason I have kind of stayed local, is I love how fast I can turn the rudder at the local level, and not really, because I was a legislative liaison at our state capitol for senators and representatives, and dude, it's DC is horrible. All the state capitals are horrible. It's a cesspool. It's a lot of political games and blackmail, and I'll scratch your back if you scratch mine, and trading votes and everything that I hate. Right. And it can really wear you out if you're a person of principle. And I've always said that politics can be a self-selecting group. You know what I mean? It's those ones that you go in with these great intentions, and you have this intestinal fortitude and all these principles. And after, a couple of years, you go, well, geez, nothing's changing. No one listens. Everyone's depraved. I'd rather just go spend time with my wife and kids. You know what I mean? And like they kind of exit their way out. And you really see like good men burn out just because it is a constant battle. So I say all that to say, I appreciate you as one doing the things you're doing at the local level, and how you ran for city council and all those things. We need more guys like that. But I would say then we probably agree on Christians being involved. But I was kind of wondering, what's your opinion on, is there a biblical mandate for that? Where do we find that in Scripture? Or is it not directly found in Scripture, but it's just permissible?
So I would say if the talents and abilities that God has given you would be such that it would be harmful for your soul to be involved in politics. And I also think, I will add to the caveat that I think a lot of people will take that as an out, so why they shouldn't. So hear me correctly. I think that a lot of people have the ability, and God has called many more people than actually do. But I think my exception, which is why I wouldn't call it, I wouldn't be able to say mandate, is if you're in that category where it would be harmful to your soul, it would force you to abdicate other responsibilities in the spheres that God has called you in. So with that being said, I do think that, I kind of interpret the Dominion mandate, and by extension, the Great Commission, would probably be the first place that I would go. So right out of Genesis 1 and Matthew 28, because I think disciple the nations, teach them all, teach them to observe all that I have given you. Or that, to me, you teach from positions of influence. Also, I think the Lord instituted the civil magistrate, therefore it's an inherent good, and therefore we should preserve it. So those positions are going to exist. Their seats at city council, the seats at school board, the seats at state office and federal office, they exist. And I don't know anyone who kind of advocates that we shouldn't be involved in politics, because I think that also at the same time advocates that we shouldn't have those things. So I think the most consistent position would be for those people would be like, no, we shouldn't have those things because they're a result of the fall and they're bad things, so we shouldn't have them at all. But I don't hear anyone advocating for the consistent that we shouldn't have them at all. So therefore, those seats exist. So now the question is, are they going to be filled by pagans, or are they going to be filled by Christians? Right? Who is going to do righteousness? who's going to love their neighbor as themselves? Well, it's not the pagan, right? So by Christians abdicating the arena of these civil magistrate positions, they're allowing pagans to fill them. And then wicked men rule from these positions, and then our sons and daughters have to reap the repercussions of that. I also think that I take utilizing your talents, the parable of the talents, as kind of a driving reason why more specifically Christian fathers need to be involved, because the Lord has given each of the saints individual talents and abilities. And within the civil magistrate realm, there's several different types. You're in the commissioner role. I was in a precinct chair as well as a city councilor. So everyone looks at kind of just these federal, like the president of the United States or the congressman, and they're like, well, I couldn't do that. But there's treasures. There's positions that, with the abilities and talents that God gave you, how are you stewarding them? And are you using them to glorify Him in all that He has given us? So I take utilizing talents. And also, I think that this is probably where I'm most passionate about, because it's really caused me from going political to writing, is the inheritance of our children. So Proverbs 13 says, a good father leaves an inheritance for his children's children. And I think that often we've kind of like minimized that down to, well, what's your 401k look like? And are you leaving them with something? And well, actually, they're going to inherit the world that we leave them. So they're going to inherit the school conditions if they, that's why with public education, the state that it's in, they're going to inherit the world in the way that we leave that. So if you're a loving father, you are taking that into account and saying, I want to shoulder that burden to love my children, to love my great-great-grandchildren that I'll never meet. So I think all those things all encompass is what drives me to say, yes, more fathers must step into the political arena. And we're talking about the precinct chair level, which I alluded to earlier. The barrier to entry is extremely low. To sign up, it is literally filling out a form. If you're in one of those vacant seats, filling out a form and going to a meeting for 2 hours once a month during election season, and maybe once a quarter in non-election. So these are very small like asks in terms of time, and you can make a massive impact. So hopefully that answers your question then.
No, yeah, that's so good. I agree with all of those points too. There's a couple things I'd say to that. One, I always kind of sit back and laugh and think about how 500 to 1,000 years ago, maybe in Europe, the lower class would go, if we just had a great king, things would be better, right?
Yep.
And now we have such an easy way under our political system as a constitutional republic to make those changes for ourselves and to really act and think and talk in a Christly manner in the public sphere. And still Christians go, I don't know if I want to, and you just go, you know what we've been blessed with, even within this constitutional system, to be able to do that. Two, I would say, and I've been saying this for 10 plus years, and I was saying it well before the school board issues started happening. I was saying this back in 2010, go run for the school board. You have so much power over budget and curriculum. It's a thankless job. Maybe sometimes you get paid $1,000, $1,500 a year. You have a meeting a month, whatever it is. But that school board makes so many decisions that affects your community. And usually you can win those seats in smaller districts for 200 votes. You know what I mean? 150 votes. It's crazy what I see sometimes. And then thirdly, like you were saying, even at the state and federal level, people go, oh, I can't do that. Oh, I don't want to be a congressman. Listen, there's positions like a county clerk or a county treasurer, right? Exactly. Our county treasurer stirred paint at Sherwin-Williams. He's 26 years old. He put his name in there because no one else did. He won. He oversees $250 million in bonds for our county. He writes his name on the check when we accept federal mandate money and ARPA funds from Joe Biden and what it stipulates we can and can't do. If you have a Christian in that position, we can reject those. We can play with those a little bit. It's like, so there's this weird thing where people think politics is just Congress and higher. And I think they do that on purpose to make you think that, when in fact, 80% of what's being affected in your community is at the local level. And I do have to give my kudos to Trump here, because in 2017 and 18, he called me and 50 other county commissioners down from one from each state. and brought us into the White House 2 years in a row. And we sat down with him, his Interior Secretary, his SBA president. I mean, basically his cabinet. And for 8 hours, they each spoke to us and we spoke to them, and they wanted to know, what are we doing at the federal level that's affecting you at the county level or at the local level, and how can we change that? No other president has done that before or since. And I think it showed a lot of understanding of, yeah, we might make these big ominous laws and pass these big, beautiful bills at the federal level, but generally most of your change is happening at the local level. So I would just say that an encouragement to anyone listening, and I know I'm preaching to the choir, someone you has been locally elected and has done all that work, but I can't stress enough how much you can get done, and for the betterment, for Christendom, for your children. And I 100% agree with you on the inheritance thing. We've made that about money. We are leaving a culture, a world, a system of laws, right? An economic system, all those things to our children. And we need to leave it better than what we found it.
Amen. Amen. Yeah, I 100% agree. And I think it's interesting, like on the Reformed X world, when we're watching all these deep debates and back and forths, I always think how talented these men who are sitting here and spending the time to write these back and forth, which are important. Like I enjoy them. I think they're great. But I also think if those talents were used to write resolutions at your precinct level of what you expect of your elected officials, and also into, hey, what am I going to bring to the state convention to be actually a platform priority? And like the robustness and the talent of specifically the Reformed world, I think understanding of theology and application, if they just take that next step and say, hey, actually, I'm going to show up once a month to a meeting for 2 hours, or I'm going to step into these roles, and it doesn't have that limelight that I think that what a lot of Christians will use of, oh yeah, but then I'm going to be on TV, and then they're going to say, like, they're just going to trash me from a personality standpoint. Like, no one knows for the most part, no one knows who precinct chairs even are. So you're really the behind the scenes groundwork of setting your entire state platform. So that's what I want to be encouraging to the Reform world in particular, but all Christians. I mean, I just see the skill set that's used in the Reform world, and I'm like, man, you could write some amazing resolutions that could be brought to your state delegation and create so much change if you would just take that step and go print off the application, turn it into your county chair, and be willing to show up once a month.
It's funny because I've shut down many conversation with kind of these Reformed bro guys at conferences and things, and they're pontificating about these political things. And I'll just go, well, what election have you won? And I'm not saying that to be cocky, but I'm saying, how many doors have you knocked? And did you run in a district that was maybe heavily Democratic and you ran as a Republican, and you got 8,000 or 10,000 or 15,000 people to vote for you? And they inevitably go, well, no, I've never ran for anything. And I said, well, then this is all theoretical to you. I've knocked 8,000 doors. I have to run every other year for election. I have to go talk to my neighbors, look at them face to face, and say, this is what I believe in, and this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to make our county a sanctuary city for the Second Amendment and everything constitutional. I'm going to fine our sheriff if he does anything that's unconstitutional. In fact, I'll withhold his $42 million budget. These are the things I'm going to do. If you believe in that, vote for me. If not, do not vote for me, because I do what I say. And I'm going to tell you something, JT. I've even had people who are like, yeah, I'm a longtime Democrat, but I like the way you're talking. You got my vote, right? I really have to separate the Twitter X stuff, you know what I mean? And the theoretical, this is what we should do, versus the people that have actually been in it. And what you end up finding is a lot of these guys, oh, I took a picture with Donald Trump Jr. at a rally, and now I'm a political expert. Okay, bud, we can all get we can all do our photo ops. Have you actually done the work? Like yourself. People don't understand how much work a precinct delegate is. And then here in Michigan, a precinct delegate, we're the ones who elect our lieutenant governor. You got the governor and the other people groveling towards the precinct delegates, like, please elect this guy. Is who I want to run with. And we're like, no. We've got the say over our attorney general nomination, our lieutenant governor nomination, our secretary of state nomination, our Michigan school board, state education board. Like, it's a very important role. And like you said, usually about half of them aren't even filled every year at the local level within my county. That's crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy, and it can make so much of a difference. And that's why I think sometimes, like, if you look at it from the other side of like the swamp element of the establishment, whether on the Republican side of the party, I think it's under advertised on purpose, because you kind of only want your type that's going to keep the status quo, right? So I don't think that's why I like to talk about this particular element, because I think that a lot of Christians, just being as charitable as possible, they don't even know this position exists. They don't know the amount of commitment. They don't like, and so even when you reach out to I recommend also when you reach out to your county chair, you should probably operate under the assumption that if they've been in the game for a long time, they kind of like the status quo. So kind of lay low and just go lay the land before you go in there hard charging. It will help. It will help you immensely. But I also think I think it's under the radar for a reason. But if Christians will answer that call, man, they could make a drastic difference. And I also think it's like, we're talking about one thing I write about on the blog is biblical masculinity, and there's one thing about talking about the traits that you desire to have, but also like when you're in these positions. When I was in city council, for example, it was a purple district. I have a completely split council, so half of the city loved me and half the city hated me. I refused to sit on the dais with a mask. I refused to do any of the jab theatrics, as I like to refer to it as. And so you actually it's applied, right? Because it's one thing to like talk about, I would do this and I would, but when you're facing the opposition in that arena, it actually requires you to be like, I guess a perfect example of this, before I leave for meetings, I hug all my children and tell them I love them, and I act like I'm going into a battle, because spiritually you're facing opposition, and you're standing your ground. And I don't think that you can actually get that practice by talking about theory on X. It's good to exercise those thoughts. I think it's great. I'm not trying to, because a lot of great ideas come from there. Now let's follow through. Now let's all show up.
Yeah, no, it's so good. And I've had people say too, like, well, what do I need to know? Like what kind of principle, what is it that they're looking for? And I just say, just go read the books of wisdom in the Old Testament. That includes Ecclesiastes, Proverbs, and Job, and you'll be pretty set. And I always find it very telling that both Job and Solomon in the books of Proverbs and Ecclesiastes, they're not giving you wisdom on how to be a better shepherd or how to graze land better. What is the most prominent thing? A wise king does this. A wise leader does this. A wise worker. So even in Proverbs, I read through that. I read a Proverbs a day, and you just over and over, you see that even. And of course, Solomon was a king, so he's pulling from personal experience, and David was too, and he's talking in the Psalms. But they're pulling from the angle of you're some type of leader, whether it be in your home, your church, right? One of the spheres that the Lord has given us dominion over. So I find it very telling that when I go through Proverbs, I see, a wise king has many counselors. Okay, he just doesn't take advice from one person. That's good as a father. That's good as a husband. That's good as someone in elected office. That's good as a business leader. It's like it applies everywhere, but it's never coming from the angle of, hey, you're just this lowly Christian that has no say, no influence, can't really do anything. We just have to sit back and wait for God to move. No, he's Solomon, especially very proactive, and this is what wisdom looks like pragmatically in everyday life. But I did want to ask you this. I've heard you already mention fatherhood 2 times, masculinity once. Like, why is men being in these positions, maybe even in the political arena, so important? I know we touched on inheritance is one of the reasons, but are there other reasons why men and fathers should be involved in the community, whether or not it's just politically or whether it's, nonprofit organizations, church membership, those type of things? Why is it important for men specifically?
Well, I think I think first thought comes to mind is protection. So you are actually standing in the breach of tyranny if you allow your government to do it to you. You are actually saying, no, I'm going to stand here so the pagan doesn't fill this seat. And you're modeling that specifically to your son. So I actually take my sons with me when I have a booth at like an air show, for example. And one, often, actually, times there will be an unhinged leftist that will come up and start screaming at me, and my son gets to watch it. And my son watches that, and then I have the conversation after, and I say, well, Dad, why is that person so angry? I said, well, they don't know Christ. They're far from Christ, and they need Christ. And but they also see me like they witness me not shy away from that, to stand there.
Right.
So it's modeling that to your children, which is what the father is called to do, in protection and provision. So you're in a role where we're talking about budgets, and we're talking about what you can actually give resources wise to your community, and if individuals don't meet their expectations of what they're required to do, actually being willing to stand firm and say, actually, you're not meeting your obligation, and so I'm going to stand in the breach here. So provision for the inheritance that your children are left through the time and place that God has them in, I think is another huge one. It's just that people don't make that connection, that it's actually the father's duty to provide, and they think just like, hey, paying the bills, which is true. You should actually 100% be working to pay your bills and provide for your family. Yes and amen. At the same time, let's not leave it there. You are providing the conditions in which your children will work when they seek to get a job, because of the policies that you either stopped or allowed in your own community. So step into the breach so that they inherit a better condition, so they don't have to go try and find a job and say, oh man, I can't really find a job because if I hold to the inerrancy of Scripture and I'm overtly a Christian in that environment, I won't get hired. Well, that happens by abdication of fathers in particular, not showing up and fighting for that specific arena, and then leaving that as an inheritance for their children.
Yeah, no, that's so good. I'm so glad you said, like, setting an example. If you're a father and in these positions, I'm a real estate broker by trade, and I've been doing that for 15 years. My oldest is 15, so right around the time my oldest was born. So all three of my kids have seen me do that and work with clients their whole entire life. And then since 2016, county commissioner. But as you were talking, that reminded me of a situation, and tell me what you think about this. So we had an issue where we passed something called Proposition 2 by ballot. So that means all the state of Michigan got to vote for it back in 2022. And it essentially legalized abortion up until the moment of birth. It also allowed teachers to help students transition without the knowledge of the parent, and some other things in there too. So a very liberal bill. It passed 55 to 45. There was a $50 million blitz on how it was positioned by the liberals. And people were either hoodwinked by it or just didn't care. But essentially, we passed something that just as liberal as California or anywhere else, probably one of the most liberal referendums. Right after that, I lived in Temperance, Michigan, which is 3 miles over the Ohio-Michigan line, southeastern Michigan. We had a gentleman who owned a building there, and there was a rumor going around that he was going to lease part of his building to an abortion doctor, the same abortion doctor that made national news by getting in trouble because he was just throwing away body parts down in Cleveland, Ohio, and he got caught with babies' heads and arms and things like that. And then, of course, got a slap on the wrist, and he's back in business. And I had a conversation. I'm driving in the car with my 3 children. This is a few years ago. And I get a call, and it's the owner of the building, because I had called him. He calls me back, and I went, well, okay, we're doing this now. And essentially the conversation went something to the effect of, do not take this as a threat, but I do want you to know that that as a real estate broker and a county commissioner, someone who sits on planning and zoning, someone who is the chair of the county planning commission, if you decide to make this decision, I will do everything in my power legally to use the law to not only stop you from doing it, but to shut you down and make sure whatever needs to be rezoned or moved or changed. And I just want you to know that because of where I'm coming from on what you're allowing to go on in your building, right? The murder of children. And, long story short, that never happened. And I think it's partly because of that conversation. But the first thing I did is I turned to my kids in the car as we're driving, and I said, what did you guys think about that conversation? Let's have a discussion about it. So there's a very heavy, discussion I'm having with a property owner and my kids are in the car, and it's like, okay, well, now this is a teaching moment. And I was fair, and I was level-headed, and there was no screaming, but I was very direct and very stern, that I will use everything within my legal power to stop this, and just know who you're dealing with. I wanted him to make sure, do not discount me because I'm nice and I've shaken your hand and I've seen you at council meetings and, golf trips and all that stuff, but this is where we're at on this. So I like the fact that you said that too, to where it can become an example, whether politics, you own a business. I mean, everyday life, fathers should be examples for their children, right? But I would say in those things where you're providing and you're protecting, be an example even there too, which I really like that you said that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that those moments are it's one of those things that we'll actually never fully grasp how impactful they are on our children. And they are moments where they will remember that forever. And it will then, when they are pushed around or when they're faced with a conflict that opposes what Christ says that we are to do, they say, well, actually, I witnessed my dad say, no, I don't care if that's what you think in the world. We're not going to do that. Our family's not going to do that. We stand up for righteousness as Christ calls us to. And it can be in very small things, and even those small things, they just add up. And I think that's, as the leader of our household, that's what we're called to do. And so in the realm of politics, your children can see a ton, but like you said, it's not limited to that. It's how you conduct business. It's how the integrity in which you deal with the people that you do business with. It can't be overstated how much that will resonate and build the foundations of what they're going to be as husbands and fathers later in their life.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. As we wrap this episode up here, JT, tell me what you got going on. You got the books. I know that. And what's the newest book out? I see it in front of me, but I can't read it there. I got to zoom in on it.
Tales of Calvaria, A Trial of Kings.
I like it. And we'll link that up, guys, so you can click through, purchase that, support our brother JT in his authorship endeavors. But so the book's out, precinct delegate. What do you got coming up in the future? What do you got going on right now? Give me a little bit about the personal.
So other than we're expecting our fourth child in a month, so that's on the forefront of my mind, actually. So that's very big. I also am heading to the SBC annual meeting next week. Yeah. So I'm a messenger for our church. So that's a good. I'm looking forward to that, and I'm very thankful for my pastor who feels like that's an important thing to show up to. He's coming with me, and other than that, we're writing away. There's several projects on the writing front, all in the overtly Christian fiction sphere. And I think that's so important because I actually think we don't realize how much the narrative in media shapes the characteristics and values that are instilled upon our children. And like what we just said as an example of counteracting that, but there's these subliminal things that are sent out to them every day. So I think actually narrative is upstream from what manifests in culture. So you have these really passive male figures. I use an example like Modern Family, where the patriarch, so to speak, is indistinguishable from the gay couple. And so that actually resonates and manifests into society where men are like passive and just kind of androgynous, which is the culture's goal. So I'm really passionate about writing right now, specifically from an overtly Christian lens, but also just attacking those idols and misrepresentations of what men are supposed to be. I think men are very much targeted by society because they realize if men are weak, society is easy to control. And so really building up young fathers. I'm the most bullish person on young fathers in particular because we've seen a lot, we've been through a lot, and we're ready for the fight ahead. So those are the things that are on the forefront of my mind, and just staying plugged in and working in politics until the Lord tells me I'm not, which I don't think is going to happen. It'll probably be a lifelong endeavor.
Awesome. And before we go out here, though, I love that you're doing fiction too, and overtly Christian. There's such a vacuum for good fiction that isn't doesn't have an overtly liberal, progressive, secular, pagan slant to it. Like if I find a book that just like the main character is righteous and he upholds justice and brings justice to the evildoer, like that's the bar is so low. I'm like, oh, this is a pretty good book. And it doesn't even have to be like overtly Christian. I'm saying like that's how far we've gone, right? Like if the man is a man, a woman is a woman, righteous is righteousness, and evil is evil. As Christians, we go, oh, that's pretty, that we can read. That's pretty good. And it's like, what?
Yeah.
What are we doing?
Yeah.
That's how low the bar is, because like you said, you know, there was a set of books when my wife and I first got married, and this was a long time ago. It was 19 years ago. And it was a Prey series. It was like Shadow Prey, something Prey, right? And the guy had like 19 books, and he's a cop, and he's whatever. It was very like Bosch-like. I don't know if you know that series on Amazon Prime, but very like that, right? But he was just a pagan. He just went around sleeping with whoever he wanted to. He's doing this. He's cutting corners, and it was written so well. Right. Very interesting. Bring you in. It was to the point to where I would finish one book and then hand it to my wife in bed, and she would start the next one. And we would just go through. About halfway through the series, we said, what are we putting into our minds though? Really? Like we can justify it and go, oh, we're not watching it. We're not watching a raunchy movie, but we're reading it. We're reading all these things going on. And it was just very convicting. And we gave it up, and we kind of got sad. We need something like this within the Christian realm, right? Just very good writing. That holds your attention, that paints a picture, but then also has the themes and the principles of Christ in them that reflect him in that, you know? So I'm so happy that you're doing something like this. I'm definitely going to buy the book and take a look at it. If nothing else, I'll read it along with my 11-year-old son, because he likes that kind of stuff.
Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate that.
All right, man. I'll let you get out of here. We won't keep any longer. JT, new friend of the podcast. Come back anytime. If you got something new coming out, want to talk about it, hit me up, and we'll make sure we get you back on. Love meeting you. Love talking to you, brother.
Likewise, brother. Take care. I appreciate it.
All right, guys, thanks so much for listening to another episode of Dead Men Walking Podcast. As always, just at the top of the show, you can find out more about us at DMWpodcast.com. All our socials are there too. We're on X and Instagram, all those places. Keep telling a friend. Keep sharing. We're growing by leaps and bounds. We appreciate it. And your support through the merch store and other ways help us get to conferences. I'm hosting 3 conferences this year. We'll be covering all those on the podcast as well. I'll have dates for you guys. I think Michael Foster's end of August with his Blue Collar. I think Roadmap to Revival with James White and Jeffrey Rice. That's going to be in September. Obviously, we run Media Row for Fight Laugh Feast down at those every year in October. That's going to be in Tennessee. But we got a lot coming up. Oh, Caleb Corden next year in March. That's far off, but we'll be talking about that, hosting that one. So that allows us to get to these conferences, have those talks with people, cover them for you, and then bring them to you as well, too. So we appreciate all the support, both prayers, financially, and sharing with a friend. That's how we grow. Guys, remember the chief end of man is to glorify God and enjoy him forever. God bless. Be sure to check us out at DMWpodcast.com, where you can purchase the best and snarkiest merch on the internet, support the show, and leave us a review or message. Dead Men Walking can be found on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Dead Men Walking Podcast, and on Twitter X at Real DMW Podcast. The Dead Men Walking Podcast is part of the Fight Laugh Feast Network. For exclusive show content, be sure to download the PubTV app and become a member. If you're a business that needs to reach hundreds of thousands of potential customers in your demographic, podcast advertising might be for you. Send all inquiries to deadmenwalkingpodcast@gmail.com.
None your biscuit.